February 16, 2024, His Excellency, Volker Turk, High Commissioner for Human Rights, the United Nations Human Rights Commission, Geneva, Switzerland. His Excellency, Judge Nawaf Salam, President, the International Court of Justice, The Hague, the Netherlands. An urgent appeal regarding the brutal massacre of civilians in the town of Marawi, Amara, Ethiopia. Your Excellencies, we, the undersigned civil society organizations of Ethiopians in the diaspora, pen this letter to express our profound sadness and shock concerning the tragic events that unfolded in the town of Marawi, Amara region, Ethiopia, on January 29, 2024. Perpetrated by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, this incident resulted in the brutal massacre of scores of innocent civilians, spanning all age groups. Reputable sources, including the Associated Press, BBC, and the Jerusalem Post, have reported on the door-to-door and street executions by ENDF security forces following heavy fighting between government forces and local militia insurgents. Eyewitnesses estimate the number of casualties between 150 and 200 individuals. We commend the US, the EU, the UK, and the Canadian government's call for an investigation into the reported massacre. We echo their deep concern and join them in demanding unrestricted access for independent human rights monitors to thoroughly investigate the matter and ensure an impartial inquiry that holds perpetrators accountable. We also call upon the international community to denounce the massacre, as well as the 7-month-long state of emergency and the persistent government-sponsored massacres across the Amara region over the past 2 years. These actions have resulted in the tragic loss of thousands of innocent lives. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission stated that the commission has initiated an investigation into the massacre. However, the Commission says that a lack of a response from the government and involved parties is creating difficulties in completing the investigation. Human Rights Watch had called for the international community and the United Nations to maintain pressure on the Ethiopian government to ensure justice to the victims. The ongoing crisis and targeted violence against civilians demands immediate attention to end the suffering of countless victims. Reports and testimonies from survivors depict a horrific scene of widespread massacre, rape, torture, and the destruction of villages. Women and children have especially been victimized, facing sexual violence and exploitation on an unimaginable scale. Thousands of civilians have been incarcerated in concentration camps, and millions more have been displaced from their homes. In light of these atrocities, we call upon the United Nations Human Rights Commission and the International Court of Justice to take meaningful actions, including but not limited to, urging for an independent investigation into the human rights violations and atrocities committed in the town of Marawi and other parts of the Amara region, with the aim of holding the perpetrators accountable for their actions. Implementing targeted sanctions against individuals and entities responsible for perpetrating violence and human rights abuses in the Amara region. Providing humanitarian aid and support to affected communities, including medical assistance, counseling, shelter, and food supplies. Using all diplomatic, development, and legal tools to compel the government of Ethiopia to immediately end the 7-month-long state of emergency, which has given security forces unchecked powers over Amara civilians, and to withdraw military presence from the Amara regional state without delay. Your positive actions in this matter can ensure that the lives lost in Marawi and other parts of the Amara region will not be forgotten, and that violators of human rights will be held accountable for their crimes. Sincerely, signatory organizations, American Ethiopian Public Affairs Committee, Ethio-Canadian Network for Advocacy and Support, Ethiopian-American Development Council, Ethiopian-American Civic Council, Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Network, Global Ethiopian Scholars Initiative, and New York Tri-State Hope for Ethiopia, CC, Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary-General, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, Azali Assoumani, Chairperson of the African Union, Antony Blinken, United States Secretary of State, Melanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada. Thank you.
The town of Marawi in Ethiopia's northern Amhara region. The country's human rights watchdog says at least 45 people were killed here during door-to-door raids by federal security forces in late January. Both the United States and the European Union have called for an investigation into the killings. They come after months of clashes last year between the military and Fano militia, a so-called self-defense organization that draws volunteers from the local population. While the federal government has not commented on the latest killings, the fighting last year prompted it to impose a state of emergency in the region. Amhara violence is Ethiopia's most serious crisis since the end of fighting in the neighboring region of Tigray in 2022. Fano had been an ally of federal troops in that war and began a rebellion against government plans to disarm them.